The officers were stunned. As they studied the maps, they realized a massive enemy force was advancing toward them.
Stalingrad was a vital industrial city. At first, life continued as usual, unaware of the disaster approaching.
German commanders believed this campaign would end quickly. Confidence filled the room as plans were finalized. One of the largest military forces ever assembled began moving east, determined to seize control. Millions of soldiers marched forward, each step carrying them deeper into hostile territory.
News of the invasion spread quickly. Fear began to replace normal life across the Soviet Union.
The Volga River stood quietly, soon to become a lifeline and a battlefield. From the skies, German aircraft prepared to strike, bringing destruction from above. Inside the factories, production increased rapidly as the nation prepared for total war. As the skies darkened, Stalingrad stood on the edge of one of history's deadliest battles. The German advance began with overwhelming force, pushing rapidly toward the heart of Soviet territory. Speed and coordination defined the invasion, as armored units moved faster than expected. Soviet commanders understood the danger, knowing every delay could cost them the city. Defensive lines were built in desperation, as time ran out for proper preparation. Thousands of civilians fled the city, uncertain if they would ever return. Artillery units took their positions, preparing to reduce the city to rubble. The attack began with relentless bombardment, shaking the city to its core.
Stalingrad's industrial heart was engulfed in fire within hours.
Air raids turned entire neighborhoods into ruins, leaving little shelter behind.
By nightfall, Stalingrad was already transformed into a battlefield.
German troops moved into the city, expecting a quick victory. Stalingrad had become a maze of ruins, where every building could become a battlefield. Soviet defenders waited silently, determined to hold their ground at any cost. Fighting quickly turned brutal, with combat unfolding at point-blank range. Factories and workshops became fortresses in the struggle for control. Progress was slow and dangerous, as every step forward risked ambush. Exhaustion set in quickly, yet neither side could afford to pause for long. Day and night blended together as the battle showed no sign of stopping.
The city was slowly being erased, block by block.
Control of Stalingrad came down to individual buildings and relentless determination.
Snipers dominated the ruins, turning every street into a deadly crossing. Survival depended on staying low and moving carefully through the shattered city. Buildings were captured and lost repeatedly, sometimes changing hands within hours. Individual determination became as important as weapons in this brutal fight. Combat was so close that modern tactics often broke down completely. Smoke and destruction concealed movements, turning the city into a battlefield of uncertainty. The expected quick victory faded as exhaustion and resistance slowed the advance. Reinforcements arrived under cover of darkness, often crossing the river under constant threat. As temperatures dropped, the battle became even more unforgiving.
By now, Stalingrad had turned into a war of endurance, with no clear end in sight.
The Soviet counteroffensive began with overwhelming artillery fire across the frozen plains.
Armored units surged forward, targeting the weaker flanks guarding the German advance.
Defensive lines broke apart as Soviet forces pushed through with relentless pressure. The speed of the advance surprised German commanders, leaving little time to respond.
Reports confirmed the worst fears as Soviet forces closed in from multiple directions.
The encirclement was completed, trapping German forces inside the city.
With supply lines severed, survival inside the pocket became increasingly uncertain. Morale collapsed as reality set in among the encircled troops. Soviet forces steadily tightened their grip around the trapped enemy. Stalingrad was now completely surrounded, marking a turning point in the battle.
Inside the encirclement, survival became a daily struggle against cold and hunger. Medical care was almost non-existent, and many wounds went untreated.
Air resupply efforts continued to fail, unable to sustain the trapped army.
Commanders faced an impossible situation, with no clear path to escape. Soviet pressure intensified, leaving the trapped forces with fewer options each day.
Resistance began to collapse as organized defense became impossible. Soviet forces moved carefully, securing what remained of the city. Tens of thousands were taken prisoner, marking a devastating loss. When the fighting ended, little remained of the city that once stood here. The Battle of Stalingrad had come to an end, leaving a lasting mark on history. Victory came at an enormous cost, measured in lives and total destruction.
The battlefield was left with silent reminders of those who never left.
For Germany, the defeat marked the loss of an entire army. The battle became a turning point, shifting the course of the war forever. Stalingrad stood as a symbol of sacrifice, endurance, and the true cost of war.